We've been climbing around underneath the car and working on some stuff. We also put our little tiny springs in our distributor, got that done. Checked the timing now. We've got all of our timing now in at about 2,700 RPMs. So I think that's going to help us out quite a bit. The other thing we did is got underneath there and checked our drive line angles. You know, we had a little discrepancy between the front and rear transmission, the diff, whatever you want to call it. And what we ended up doing was raising the back of the engine up a little bit at the transmount, about 1/4 of an inch, which took some of the downward angle out of the engine to match the pinion angle at the other end. So hopefully we don't have any more driveline violations. There you go, vibrations. But we'll have to go on a test run to sort that out. We're still trying to cipher this radiator conversion project. And, you know, one of the things we've got to deal with is we've got a piece of box tubing across here, which really makes up the what you would call the radiator core support, like a spreader bar between the two fenders. So we really can't come back past that without sort of going underneath it or cutting it out and then putting it on top of whatever we put in there. So we gotta just spend a little time trying to sort this out. I've had a couple of additional ideas that I've got to look into. One of them would be to see if I can get the dual fan set up first and fit it to this radiator, and see if that solves our problem. And the other thing is to see if, since the rads are both the same size, the super cool rad and the standard cool rad are the same size, once I get the dual fans in there, if I still need additional help, then I can just do a rad swap because everything else is the same. So I'm going to have to look into that. And what I'd like to do, quite frankly, is get a template, cross-sectional template, right, maybe of the side of the system with the shroud and the rad, and then I can take this top cover off and see really what I'm going to be in for and fitting that whole thing in there. I think it'll work. I think we can get the fans on the back side of the radiator, the dual fan shroud, and I think we've got enough room out here to bring the rad out if we have to, however many inches. We may have to trim this lower valence just a little bit because it's kind of V-shaped, so there's plenty of room in the middle, but it tightens up over here, and we may have to notch that a little bit. I think we can make it work. I just don't like to experiment. I'd rather be able to have all the dimensions in a template or something and be able to lay the whole thing out and then just put it in there because I know it'll fit. So we'll see what we can come up with. Have to get hold of the radiator people again and see if I can get a little more information from them. I've got some pictures of the product, but yeah, it doesn't really answer all my questions. So we'll stay on that. And at some point here, we've got the thing up on the lift right now. At some point, we want to put this thing on the ground, and we'll set up our cameras and go for a ride. All right, we're getting a little deeper into this Pinto radiator project. So we got our template, and we've taken the top off of that. So we can see This is about a 3-inch thick radiator here, at least the tank is. The core here is about 2 1/4, and we have these little lips here, and basically, I don't know if we have our template of what we want to do here to put a shroud and electric fans in. And basically, there we've got our radiator there, we've got our shroud, and then this big thick part is the fans. Take up about 2 inches of space. So I think I'm gonna have to make my own shroud. I was hoping to just buy the package already done and put it in there, but I'm afraid that what's going to happen, I've got this piece of 3-inch tube across here, really, that's acting like a core support, and I'm afraid that's going to be in the way of the shroud the way they make it. So basically what's going to have to happen is made this little template here, and the shroud will fasten to that lip there above the core, and then go under that piece of tube. And I just don't think the way that their setup is made, it's going to be good enough. This particular piece is as 3/4 up and 1 inch wide, and that 1 inch width is going to allow, because this core is set back in here into the tank 3/8 of an inch, so it ends up that the shroud, in order for the fans to be 1 inch away from the rad, that center part's going to be 1 inch. And here in this particular, I made this flange 3/4, but I think what I'm going to do is make it 1 inch, 1 inch, and 1 inch. And I've got to make this flange the full length, and then I'm going to make the shroud with just a flat panel with a return on each side, and then this will rivet to the top to make the whole shooting match. Rather than try to weld it all together, I'll just rivet this piece to the flat piece, and then that will fasten to this. And I think by building my own, I'm going to guarantee that I have enough room to be underneath that piece of tubing, because we go back to our template, and what needs to happen is, see if I can fit that needs to be under there like that, so that really what's going to happen is those fans, the back of the fan is going to be just about flush with the back of that tubing, and that will clear my pulleys. But that also means that we're going to have to move the whole rad forward about 2 or 2.5 inches. And personally, I don't like that. I like the rad where it is. But, you know, in order to put electric fans on the inside, I don't see really any other choice. And I've already got a fan on the outside. I suppose I could put the shroud on the front and put the dual fans blowing air through, but that's really a waste of a good idea. So I think what's going to happen is I'm going to have to notch that splash pan there, and probably notch the lower valance, and that rad will come out. It really won't be out any farther than the existing electric fan, but you know, I just don't. I'm not happy. I don't know which one I am, but I am not happy. So, you know, sucks to be me once in a while. The good news is, if there's any good news, is that the replacement bigger, better, faster, stronger, more expensive radiator is exactly the same size as this one externally, just has bigger tubes in it. So I should be able to take this radiator out and build the shroud to fit this radiator, put the whole shooting match back in there, and make sure it fits before I spend the money on the new radiator. And if I was really bold, I would just take this out, build the shroud, buy the fans, put the fans in, get it all hooked up, put it back in the car, and see if it solved the problem. You know, that's a nice thought, but at the end of the day, I got to take the grill out, I got to take the splash pan off, the front bumper, the lower valence, I got to take half the car apart, so I don't want to do that more than once. But that's the update on cooling the Pinto. We got a couple of other projects going. We've got our 39 brake project that we never finished. Putting brand new rear brakes on our 39, so we're going to do that. And we've also got a new project, not ours, but a good friend's. Bought a 34 two-door, sort of 30% done, 40% done, and we're going to do some videos on Jeff's 34, and we'll have the first episode of that coming soon. Oh man, here we are. Geez, you know, I did a car show thing. I was driving this thing around. Here we are, back in pieces again. Never stops. So we've got the old electric fan out. It was on the front, and all the attaching hardware, so we get a better look at what we've got to do here. But technically, basically, however you want to address it, we've got to move this radiator out a couple of inches, 2.5, 2 5/8 inches farther forward than it is now, so that the shroud can sit back here. And I don't know if I said this yesterday or in the previous clip, but we've got to fit under this bar. So that's the tricky bit. You know I showed this before, but there's a little holes right here, and that's where the shroud attaches. So essentially, if you put it on this side, it's going to fasten to that lip and then drop down, probably cover the first row of fins, and then drop down there. But I don't know, this company makes, and again, I may be repeating myself, but this company makes a shroud for this radiator that'll bolt right on. What I don't know is if it'll clear this bar. So now I've got to do some ciphering and talk to the company and see exactly what the story is, because I made a template based on my backwards math, and you know how that works. And I'm also wondering if, they probably don't just have these shrouds laying around. They probably make them up as needed. So, my question would be, can they make me one that has enough clearance at the top here to clear this bar? If it's different, a little different than what they normally make. Basically, it's just a little shorter unit. I mean, what we've got here now is, if I can get down there, so we're 15 and a half from the bottom where the bottom tank sits on some rubber mounts up to the top of that lip. And what I'm going to have to do, let's see if I can do this the hard way. Yeah, let's see if I can look down in there. Yeah. Okay, on the other side of that, so I'm, looks like 15, and I'm looking at it at an odd angle, 15 3/4, and I know that's some 3/4 tubing, so that means that tube, the bottom of that tube is 15 down there. I mean, clearly we can see here that we're almost the same height as the top of the tube, and this lip is 3/8 of an inch. I don't know. It's late, and my ciphering ability diminishes by the day, so we'll fold up for today and maybe come back tomorrow with a clearer head and try to figure out what we got here. I mean, it's either going to be a case of build our own shroud or get them to build us a custom one, and we're going to have to see which one is the best. Okay, ciphering with a little clearer head now, and I had made that pattern and then cut it in half because I couldn't get the whole thing down in there, because I'm going to have to cut the splash apron, but kind of taped it back together, and you can see that's really how much farther forward that rad is going to have to come. OL, one of the things where I was confusing myself, and this is my sort of pattern, this is the existing rad, and this small section is the shroud, and this bigger section is the fans. Well, I get the DS award for the week because the fans don't come all the way to the top. There are two 10-inch fans in that shroud, so if you sort of go on the center line and go 5 inches either way for a 10-inch fan, you can see that area up there is non-existent because the fans don't come up that high. So, following me or not, my concern was that this whole affair had to fit under that bar, but at the end of the day, it's only the fan part of it that has to fit under the bar. So if the fans are only 10 inches high and I've got 15 inches between the bottom of the bar and the bottom tray, I should be okay. Because what's going to happen, everything is going to be forward of this bar. Everything, fans and all, is going to be forward of that bar, because down in there, you can kind of peek down in there, you can see the water pump pulley, and it's got some hex bolts holding it on, and it's just about flush with the bottom of that, with the forward edge of that bar. Now the good news is that that should be more or less in the center of the two fans. So I might pick up a little bit there, and then probably what I'm going to have to do is take those hex bolts out of there and put a button head bolt in there that doesn't take up a lot of space. So, there's all of that going on, and just, at least based on this, the stock shroud as produced by the radiator people should fit in there. As I say, we'll find out.